Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 406. Thank you for joining me today. This is my third podcast of this week. I did a special bonus podcast yesterday covering some politics. I'm really itching to get back into covering politics, which I am going to do. I want to wrap up the history that I've been doing over the past 6 months. First starting with Jewish history, and now we're talking about Catholic history. I think it's all relevant. That's what I said in the podcast I did yesterday. If you haven't had an opportunity to watch it, go back and watch it. But we're going to pick up where we left off, talking about some Catholic history and some more contemporary history of the Catholic Church. And I have a lot to share with you guys. I'll probably do one more podcast on this topic in the next podcast, because I don't think I'm going to be able to get to everything. And then we'll see what happens after that. But I want to wrap things up and get back into covering politics and what's going on as we go through the summer and enter into the congressional elections in the fall and winter. All right, so we're going to start. We've been talking about the papacy of Adrian VI, who was sandwiched in between the two Medici popes, the banking popes of the Medici family, Pope Leo X and Pope Clement XVI, his cousin. And in between these two popes, there is a pope who was a reformer. Now, we talked about this in the last podcast. The Protestant Reformation kicks off during the papacy of Leo X, the banking pope, the Jesuit. He was a wicked man that did nothing but tried to increase, and not tried to, he does increase the wealth of his family, the powerful Medici family, the banking family. And when he dies, then Adrian becomes pope for a short period of time, 20 months. And in those 20 months, Adrian, who is seen as a foreigner, we talked about in the last podcast that this is the institution there in Rome is a Italian institution. All the popes were Italian. We talked about in the last podcast that from Clement VII all the way to John Paul I in the 21st century, or in the 20th century, all the popes were Italian. And if it wasn't for Adrian, it would go back to actually to Pius III, because Pius III was the pope after the Beaujeu Pope Alexander VI. So it's an Italian institution. So when Adrian comes in from Spain, he's a Dutchman, but he comes from Spain. He's seen as a foreigner, that this is a foreigner coming in to Rome, trying to reform our church, trying to reform the Curia, and he was undermined at every step of the way. And after he dies, then you go back to the Medici banking pope, who does nothing but do things to grow the wealth of his family and the power and the prestige of his banking family, the Medici family. I have a clip here, a short clip about the Medici. If you're not familiar with the Medici, you should really look into this family. Very, very powerful European family. And no, they weren't Jews. They were bankers, but they weren't Jews. They were Roman Catholics. And take a listen to this clip.
The middle of the 16th century was an auspicious time for the Medici family of Florence. In 1537, Cosimo de' Medici ascended as second Duke of Florence. Later in his reign, he would adopt the
1537, Cosimo, his power comes in. So this is after the reigns of the two Medici popes. After Leo X and Clement VII, then you have Cosimo a decade later. So the power of the Medici family can be directly related to the two Medici papacies, is what I'm trying to get you to understand.
In 1537, Cosimo de' Medici ascended as second Duke of Florence. Later in his reign, he would adopt the grander title of Grand Duke of Tuscany. His accession in 1537 came only a few years after the end of the papacy of his cousin, Pope Clement VII. Clement's time as head of the Roman Catholic Church had followed very soon after that of another Medici Pope, Leo X.
Very soon after another Medici Pope. What are you talking? It wasn't directly after. It was very soon after. There was a 20-month speed bump, a 20-month intermission where this foreigner, this Dutchman, comes in and tries to reform all the corruption that took place under Leo X after the Protestant Reformation had already started. So Clement becomes Pope, is what they're saying here, very soon after, not directly after, but very soon after, 20-month intermission, 20-month speed bump after his cousin.
7th. Clement's time as head of the Roman Catholic Church had followed very soon after that of another Medici Pope, Leo X, Bishop of Rome, from 1513 to 1521. Meanwhile, 4 years before Cosimo became Duke of Florence, another Medici, Catherine, had married Prince Henry of France. Henry became King of France in 1547, meaning that Catherine de' Medici was now Queen Consort of one of Europe's great kingdoms. 3 of her sons would rule France. Another Medici was the mother of the Bourbon dynasty, the royal family of France during the 17th and 18th centuries. Dukes, popes, queens, kings.
So this is a powerful Italian family from the Tuscan region, from Florence, that not only became powerful throughout all of Italy and through all of France through marriage, very powerful in Europe. And they got their start at the ground level with the papacies of Pope Leo, the Medici, and then his cousin, who came after Adrian, after the 20-month speed bump, the 20-month intermission, Clement VII. All right, so back to this clip. We played a little bit of this documentary in the last podcast. This is about Adrian VI, who comes in as a foreigner. He's a Dutchman. He's seen as a foreigner. He tries to make reforms in the infancy of the Protestant Reformation that could have quailed the Protestant Reformation. He's undermined at every step by the Curia and by past canonical decrees that were made by the Medici Pope who preceded him, and he wasn't allowed to make any reforms. And then he dies 20 months into his papacy from kidney stones. And people, question if he was poisoned or if he was not treated and allowed to die. Who knows? He dies within 20 months of his papacy. And this is a clip about what happens after the papacy of Adrian.
What happens to a pope's legacy when the men who outlived him were the men who defeated him? The answer in Adrian's case is precise and documentable. It happened in stages. And it began within hours of his death. The first thing that disappeared was the paperwork, not gradually, not over years of neglect and archival disorder. The official papers of Adrian's pontificate, the correspondence with his Reform Commission, the internal communications with cardinals, the records of what had been proposed and what had been blocked and by whom, were gone before any formal inventory could be conducted. This is documented not by what exists, but by what does not. Scholars who have worked in the Vatican archives looking for the administrative record of Adrian's 20 months have found fragments. Letters sent to him by external parties, ceremonial documents, a handful of formal bulls. What is almost entirely absent is the internal record, the evidence of how decisions were made, who resisted what, and what Adrian himself understood about the forces working against him. Someone cleared the room. We do not know who. We do not know exactly when. We know only that by the time the next pontificate began, the record was gone. The conclave that followed Adrian's death lasted 50 days. 50 days of negotiation, deadlock and maneuvering among the same cardinals who had spent 20 months neutralizing his agenda. On the 19th of November, 1523, they elected Giulio de' Medici, the man who had proposed Adrian's candidacy in the first place, the man who became Clement VII. The reforms Adrian had demanded did not survive the transition. The commission was dissolved. The recommendations were archived, in the sense that they were placed somewhere and not retrieved. The system of indulgences, the matrimonial dispensations, the sale of offices, everything Adrian had identified and targeted, continued without interruption. It would take the Council of Trent, convened 22 years later, in 1545, to implement many of the changes Adrian had proposed in 1522. By then, the Protestant Reformation had permanently divided the Christian world. The moment Adrian had identified, the last moment when reform might have prevented the split, had passed. Willem, the notary from Ghent, who had processed dispensation paperwork through Adrian's entire pontificate, wrote one final letter to his brother in the weeks after the new pope's election. He wrote that the corridors of the Vatican had returned, almost immediately, to their previous character, that the conversations about patronage and position and opportunity had resumed, that it was, he wrote, as though the last 20 months had been a dream from which everyone had now woken. He did not write this with relief. He wrote it with something that reads, across 5 centuries, like a specific kind of grief, the grief of a person who had watched something genuine attempt to exist inside a space that had no room for it. He returned to Ghent the following year. What became of him after that is not recorded. Adrian was buried in Santa Maria dell'Anima, the German National Church in Rome.
If I ever went to the Vatican, I would want to go to Adrian's grave, because it's a shame what happened to him. But it was a 20-month intermission, a 20-month speed bump where the courier, which we talked about in the last podcast, this bureaucratic administrative state undermined his papacy at every step of the way. At every step of the way. He was a good man. He was a good pope. He tried to reform the church in a time where the church needed much, where the church was in need of much needed reform. The church needed reform. It was obvious. That's what the Protestant Reformation was about. And he was undermined by the courier in every step of the way. And we talked about the courier in the last podcast, and we were making a relationship between Adrian, drawing parallels, and they're not a lot of parallels, but there's some significant parallels to the papacy of Benedict XVI, Joseph Ratzinger, a modern 21st century pope, and what took place with Adrian in the 16th century. And it shows that the courier is still in drastic need of reform, and the church is still in drastic need of reform. Now, something interesting about Benedict XVI and Adrian the Sixth that are different is that Adrian was an outsider, and he came from Spain, but by way of he was Dutch born, but he was an outsider to the courier and to the administrative state there in the Papal States during Adrian's time. Benedict was not an outsider to the courier. Now, Benedict was German born in Bavaria, so he wasn't a Italian pope, but he was still very much part of the courier and part of that administrative system when he was made pope. That when he was made pope, he was elevated from the courier. He had one of the most important positions in the courier under the papacy of John Paul II. And I think that's significant because when you see the problems that he being elevated, he's one of them. He's being elevated from the courier into the See of Peter. And even he could not control the courier being one of them. It just shows that the courier is just completely out of control. I'm going to play this clip again. This is, we played this clip before. This is a clip
in the ritual
of Father Rippinger. He's an exorcist in the Catholic Church. And this was a appearance that he did on the Sean Ryan show. And he's talking about, all of this, just, immorality and corruption in the church. And he's saying that he's doing exorcists and demons are manifesting themselves and telling him the names of individuals in the church and the sins and immorality that they're committing. Let's listen to Father Rippinger again.
There's what they call Chapter 1, which is it's a set of rubrics, how to proceed and what's going to happen in the context of a session. And one of them is that the demons will reveal crimes that have occurred. And so in the cases that I have been in, they have not revealed much about the people in the civil authorities, their crimes so much as they have about the very specific rituals and crimes that people in the hierarchy have committed.
In the hierarchy of the church, just make sure that you understand that. And rituals, he uses the word rituals that have taken place. The demons are telling him in a session where he's, trying to bind the demon and remove the demon from the host. The demon manifests himself and tells him of these crimes and immorality going on in the hierarchy of the church and rituals. He says rituals.
And crimes that people in the hierarchy have committed. And so they've talked about very specific details, given specific details. And it's not just me. Other exorcists are also, they get bits and pieces of this stuff. They don't necessarily have the same full understanding that I have, because the demons have revealed, pretty much the full complexion of what's going on in the church. And it's the fact that the authority structure has been spiritually compromised by some of these people that are in it that are
the
not.
Authority of the church spiritually compromised by some of these people that are in the hierarchy.
Pretty much the full complexion of what's going on in the church. And it's the fact that the authority structure has been spiritually compromised by some of these people that are in it that are not, they're obviously involved in things that they shouldn't be involved in. And so, but the other exorcists, even the names of the people involved, the demons have said to us.
The demons have told us their names. We know their names. The demons have told us their names.
They've actually meant not just to me, but to other exorcists. They'll actually say, yes, he mentioned this particular person and this particular person, et cetera. And so we do have a fairly good complexion. By the way, I'm not the first guy that this has happened to. The Father Amorth, who was the head exorcist in Rome for like 40 years, he complained about this very problem that had been going on since he was just starting being an exorcist. We also get a sense too of like how these guys get inducted to that type of stuff. It starts to come out, in the sessions. The demons have talked about how and it's not stuff that I've ever asked. It's the demons are compelled sometimes by our Lord to talk about this stuff. So there's times like this one case that I'm working on right now. When I'm saying Mass, which we start the sessions with, very often what will happen is during the Mass, the demon will manifest. And that tells me that God has told him he's had to tell me something. And so during the session, something will come out. And very often it revolves around this stuff that's happened. But I've had more than one case talk about the stuff that's going on in the church.
In the church.
It's, spiritual, that it's leadership, not all of it, but some of its leadership is very morally compromised.
It's not all of it. It's not all of the leadership, but it's some of it. So there's a battle going on in the church, in the Catholic Church. Good versus evil. Yeah, it's not all of them, but the good guys have to battle the bad guys, and you don't really know who the good guys and who the bad guys are. It's, this is like, this is a Dan Brown book. Yeah, what was the name of that? The Da Vinci Code. But this is real life.
Not all of it. But some of its leadership is very morally compromised, and some of it is involved in stuff that's very dark. There is a book that was just recently put out by a woman who ended up getting inducted into being a victim of satanic ritual abuse through deception. I think that some of these guys can also but there's, like I said, there comes a certain point where it gets revealed what's going on, and so these guys have to either cut bait or they're going to sign off on it, one of the two. But a lot of these guys went into the priesthood already on the other team.
A lot of these guys went into the priesthood already into the occult, already on the other team, and they come into the priesthood already into the occult. Put a pin in that.
And so they went in specifically to gain the empowerment which comes through being a priest and then be able to use that power against those of us in the church.
How high up in the church does this go?
Not at the very, very top, but close to the very, very top.
Not at the very, very top, but close to the very, very top. Okay. All right.
And so I have another question. When we were talking about the demon knows that you have authority because a bishop granted you that authority to conduct an exorcism, correct?
So I think this is very interesting too, because what Sean Ryan's saying here is the reason that the exorcist has the authority, and this is going to we're probably not going to get into this in the next podcast, but because I want to get back into Matthew 16, which we haven't yet. But that's about these keys. These keys have the authority. The authority is given to Peter and to the bishops, but this authority can be distributed, I guess is the idea. Because remember, I asked the question, what do these keys unlock? Well, the authority that these keys unlock can be handed. So that's what we're talking about here in this part of the interview. And it's really profound if you understand this, that the authority is given to Peter with the keys, and then Peter can distribute that authority. So for him to be an exorcist and have the power to bind and loosen, that's what the keys do, bind and loosen, then that authority needs to be given to Father Rappinger so he can perform exorcisms. That's what Sean Ryan's asking him about. Take a listen.
Not at the very, very top, but close to the very, very top.
And so I have another question. When we were talking about the demon knows that you have authority because a bishop granted you that authority to conduct an exorcism, correct? So what if the bishop was an occult member?
That's a great question. That's such a good question. That is such a profound question, Sean Ryan. The guy just told you that demons are telling him that there's immorality and dark stuff going all the way to the top, not at the very top, but pretty close to the top. And your authority to cast out demons comes from these people. So Sean Ryan's saying, what if this person who is giving you the authority to cast out demons is part of the occult, is one of these people who you said came into the priesthood already on the other team. And he's the one distributing authority to you. And he's an occultist. He's on the other side. He's evil. And listen to what Father Rappinger says. It's I was blown away by this. And I'd watched this video, this interview as many times, but as I was preparing for this podcast, this part right here clicked to me. And I was like, oh my God, this is profound.
When we were talking about the demon knows that you have authority because a bishop granted you that authority to conduct an exorcism, correct? So what if the bishop was an occult member? Is that authority the same?
Yes, because it's by virtue of his office as a bishop.
That's what I was telling you in the last podcast. It doesn't matter who the man is. It's the office. It's the position that is important. It doesn't matter who the pope is. Good pope, bad pope, skinny pope, fat pope. It doesn't matter because it's the position. It's the office. It's the position of see of St. Peter. And it doesn't matter if there's a good guy in that seat, in that office, or matter if it's a bad guy in that office. The office, the seat, has the power. It's not the individual. It's not the man. Fat pope, skinny pope, good pope, bad pope. It's the office. Wow.
Was an occult member. Is that authority the same?
Yes, because it's by virtue of his office as a bishop. However, they're never going to give you those faculties.
Okay.
One that's involved in that. And we have a general idea of who's, at least among the upper levels, who's involved in it. But it's not going to, but the guys at the lower levels, even if he's not a good bishop, the demons know, okay, he's got the authority, so we'll observe it. So that his moral status doesn't compromise the actual authority.
When it comes to, I can't stop thinking about the hierarchy and the occult within the church. Is there anything else you want people to know about that?
Well, I think the main thing to do is there's two parts to it. The first is we need to pray and pray for the church's protection and pray so that God will give us holy leaders, a holy magisterium. We need to pray for it. The second component is you get the leaders you deserve. And I say that by virtue of the fact that a vast majority of the Catholics in the church are leading habitual lives of grave sin. And they've got to stop it, because until we stop that, you can't expect this to get cleaned up. And so really the primary way that we're going to get ameliorate that problem, other than God stepping in and correcting the problem, because he'll only tolerate stuff for so long, as I mentioned. But we have to pray and become holy ourselves, so that we merit having leaders that we're worthy of.
Wow. I'm going to read this from the book of Revelation, and we'll move on, and you can take what you want from this. But this is chapter 18 from the book of Revelation, verse 1. And these things I saw after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was litten with his glory. And he cried out mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hole of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk the wine of her wrath and of her fornication. And the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants of the earth have waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sin, and that ye receive not of her plagues. So if I was a Catholic right now, man, I'm telling you, this is and I'm praying for all of you Catholics too, because this is a very trying time for Catholics, and a lot of controversy within the Catholic Church. A lot of people, to this day, things that are happening this week are dividing the church and making members of the church scratch their head. There's all kinds of things going on. One of the things going on is this group called the Society of St. Pius X. And this is a conservative group that is going to be excommunicated. Everyone is expected that this group will be excommunicated in July. And the SSPX, the Society of St. Pius X, is a traditionalist Catholic priestly fraternity founded in the 1970s by Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre. He is a French conservative who he was there at the council, at the Second Vatican Council. This is all about the Second Vatican Council. Conservatives that are it all has to do with the liturgy, but it's even more than the liturgy, people, because they were doing Latin liturgy back in the 16th century, and you still had this corruption that was going on. The corruption has just gotten worse. It's bigger than the Latin liturgy. But there are this group is named after Pope Pius X, and he was a conservative pope known for opposing modernism. And this is even before the Second Vatican Council, the papacy of Pius. This is latter part of the 19th century or early part of the 20th century. And he was conservative. He was concerned with the modernization, or as I like to say, the post-modernization of the church. And this group started after the Second Vatican Council, is conservative. The reason that they are getting excommunicated is because they've been consecrating bishops and priests outside of the Vatican and outside of the Holy See, and they don't have the authority. Going back to this authority that's handed down from Jesus to Peter with the keys, this authority needs to be handed to you. You can't consecrate bishops, so that's why they're being But it's controversial. It's very controversial because there's many conservative Catholics that are not part of this group, but they still affiliate with what this group is saying about the modernization and the changing of the church ever since the Second Vatican Council in the 1960s. And then you have this group as well. This group is a break off of the Society of St. Pius X. And they're in Scotland, the Sons of the Most Holy Redeemer. Again, conservative group. The Transalpine Redemptorists are a religious institute of the Catholic Church, canonically erected in the Roman Catholic Diocese of Aberdeen. And they're formed in 1988 as a traditionalist offshoot of the Redemptionists, following the monastic rule. It says here the community was founded as the Transalpine Congregation of the Most Holy Redeemer in 1988. And it says that the priests, as a traditional redemption religious community, affiliated. So they were affiliated with the SSPX. So these are all conservative groups, and these conservative groups, this one, for example, they put out just this week, just happened this week. You can see the date on here, May 2nd, 2016. They put out this is 21 pages of, well, I have a clip here and let these guys explain themselves what is in this document that they put out. And it's basically, they are rejecting every single pope that has been pope since Vatican II. Why don't you listen to what these guys? So these are a lot of things that are going on within the church. This battle of good versus evil, which is being projected as modernism versus traditionalism and conservatism, but it's good versus evil. That's what it is. So I want you to listen to these guys, and they are outlining this document, this 21-page document that they put out this week, explaining why they are rejecting the papacy of every pope since Vatican II. Take a listen.
We need a council. We need to get bishops who are keeping the faith to get together and to see what on earth is going on in the church. For how much longer can we put up with this? How much longer are we going to see cardinals bending down to take blessings from an Archbishop of Canterbury who first is a lady, and next she's got no orders according to Pope Leo the 13th.
Right.
So there you go. That's a kind of my thumbnail on what it is.
Yes, here's so-called Archbishopess Sarah Mullally. You're the giving the so-called blessing there, and you mentioned this again, and you mentioned multiple things, and I appreciate the explanation there. The document itself again goes through that history of what Mirari Vos, Gregory the 16th, Pope Gregory the 16th taught, and we'll just go over the bullet points here. I think for folks to look at, there's 7 main points here that you lay out in that.
So they're going over the bullet points of this document here that they put out earlier this week.
And this is really worth driving home. The first point is the church has been infiltrated by enemies from at least the time of Pope Gregory the 16th.
The church has been infiltrated by enemies. This is their first point. Going back to what Father Rappinger, the exorcist, says. Is their very first point. This document they wrote this week, and it says that the church, that's their first point, is the church has been infiltrated by enemies.
You lay out in that, and this is really worth driving home. The first point is the church has been infiltrated by enemies from at least the time of Pope Gregory the 16th. Second, the Freemasonic heresy of indifferentism, combated by popes for over 200 years before Vatican II, was clearly taught.
The infiltration, going back to the Dan Brown book, and what is it? What's the Dan Brown book? He did 2, but the Da Vinci Code. Anyway, that the people that are, this is what this document says, that the people that have infiltrated the church are Freemasonic heresies. The Freemasonic heresies are infiltrating the church.
It's from at least the time of Pope Gregory the XVI. Second, the Freemasonic heresy of indifferentism, combated by popes for over 200 years before Vatican II, was clearly taught by Vatican II by the false authority of false churchmen. 3, the papal pretenders from Paul VI through Leo XIV have taught and acted in flagrant contradiction to the undoubtedly Catholic pre-Vatican II popes. Point 4, since the Vatican Council, the apparent popes have caused a spiritual catastrophe of the greatest imaginable proportions. 5, the new doctrinal, moral, liturgical, and disciplinary decisions since Vatican II cannot be accepted because they contradict what came before. Point 5, accepting the false teachings of Vatican II separates us from the Catholic Church. Lastly, a Catholic cannot recognize a man as the vicar of Christ and resist his teachings in matters of faith and morals, nor can he resist his commands in matters of discipline and liturgy. I want to go back real quick to, I think, probably the third point here, because I just had on a guest recently, and I think a lot of folks, not only who just watch this show, but also a lot of people who just go to the Latin Mass will agree with what you've laid out there about the infiltration, about the changes, and that they must be at minimum resisted. But I think the differences of views comes from, well, how do we respond to it? What is the nature of the crisis of the papacy? What is infallible? What's not infallible?
How do we respond to it? Back to Matthew, or to Revelation 18, come out of her, my people. That's how you respond to it. That's how I would respond to it. But so it's all about modernization, and again, the traditionalist versus the modernist. But again, this is just nothing but good versus evil. The church is being infiltrated. They're trying to change the church. So this was a synod that came out this week. And again, I'm praying for Catholics. I mean, I would hate to be a Catholic and having to make a decision about what I would do in this time today in May 2026 with what we see going on. So this was a synod that came out this week from the Catholic Church. They've been working on it, I guess, since Francis. And it's about homosexual marriage. It's about gay marriage. We talked a little bit about it a few podcasts ago. The Pope Leo had to respond to it on his plane trip back from Africa. We talked about the fact that the African diocese, they're not having it, just like these guys in Scotland that you just we played clips from, the bishops and dioceses in Africa. They're very conservative. So this has a real possibility, stuff like this, to dividing the church. This is Dr. Taylor Marshall talking about the synod that just came out this week about homosexual marriage.
We got a clarification from the Vatican. You can have same-sex gay blessings, but they can't be formal. Okay, can't be. You got to be spontaneous. All right. If you're gonna throw up the jazz hands, the priest is gonna throw up his jazz hands. He's gonna do a blessing. 2 dudes. Can't be formal. It's got to be spontaneous. That's kind of where we're at in 2026. Let me briefly tell you what I think's going on. Pope Francis, by the way, tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of Pope Leo being Pope, so it's been a whole year.
That's today.
Whole year.
That's today.
Before Pope Leo, we had Francis. Pope Francis put out a document, Fiducia Supplicans, said that people in extramarital relationships, okay, so you could have a male and his concubine, not married. You can have a divorced and remarried or a divorced fornicating couple come for a blessing as a couple. Or you could have a homosexual pair of men or a homosexual pair of women come and also receive a blessing as a couple. Now, when the document first came out, we were all over it. We were talking about it. And everyone said this is not blessing same-sex marriages or unions. And if you read the document from Pope Francis, it does not bless same-sex marriages or even the euphemism same-sex unions. The document does say bless couples. And I think this is very unfortunate. You know, couples, it's where we get the word coupe. It's a 2-seater car. It's also where we get the word copulating. And the document itself seems to indicate that these are blessings to couples. And the whole context of it is there's something sexual about this, right? If you have divorced and remarried people, or you have a homosexual couple, right? It's not that they're,
friends. They're not friends.
They play tennis doubles.
No,
they
they're having
together,
sex.
and that's what makes them a couple.
It's very deceptive.
Right. So by having divorced remarried couples get blessings as couples, and then homosexuals are receiving blessing as couples, you're already kind of granting the sexual element to the situation.
Absolutely.
And this is why a lot of people had problems with it. Well, wouldn't you know it? We got two things going on in the background. We've got the Synod on synodality. We got study groups. We got people sitting around tables with lanyards on deciding what Catholicism should be. There's study group 9. They're saying, you know what? Maybe homosexuality is not a sin. We kind of figured that out here at our little table. We're drinking coffee out of styrofoam cups. We got our lanyards on. We're important. We got backstage passes here at the Vatican. And we're kind of at the point now where we voted as a group of people with our lanyards on, say Vatican on them, Synod of Synodality lanyard, laminated lanyard, makes them official. I mean, you got apostolic succession, papal infallibility, and then you've got laminated lanyard participants at the Synod of Synodality. Section study group 9. We don't think homosexuality. So you got that going on, which just causes all this chaos that morality is democratic.
Or relative. Relative. That morality is relative depending on that we're more modern today than in social society and different societies. That's what the guy, Father, we're going to look at him in just a moment. Jesuit James Martin. That's what he said, that in Europe, it's more accepted, they're more, accepting of homosexuals. In Africa, they don't accept it. So it's a cultural thing. The cultures are different. No, it should have nothing to do with that. What's the Bible say? What has been 2,000 years of church history? That's what it should be. It shouldn't be about norms and mores shifting. It should be about ethics is what it should be.
Study group 9. We don't think homosexuality. So you got that going on, which just causes all this chaos that morality is democratic. Then you also got a problem in Germany.
So listen what he's getting ready to say about Germany. I had no idea about what he's getting ready to say until watching this, and I was blown away by this.
Germany is really a twofold problem.
Because Germany is the place where the German priests were the ones that wanted to expand the blessing to the gay couples. And that's what made Pope Leo have to comment on it when he was coming back from Africa, is because this is setting off in Germany.
Germany is really a twofold problem. First off, radically liberal. Secondly, Germany is the richest Catholic church, or the richest conference of bishops. Why is Germany the richest? Well, in Germany, they have what's called the church tax.
I had no idea about
everyone
this.
Everyone in Germany puts on their tax return their religion.
A church tax in Germany.
The government takes out of your tax. They tax you, and then they take out of your taxes an amount, and they deposit that with the religion of your choice. So imagine you turn in your tax return on April 15th and you put on there Catholic. And then I don't know exactly what the number is. Let's just say it's 9 or 10%. 9 or 10% of your tax return goes to the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. Right. So they're kind of like, don't worry about doing tithes and offering. Don't pass the basket. We, the
government,
secular state, are going to collect this in the form of taxes
and give it to you from the government.
Bishops. This, by the way, is why the German bishops are so liberal.
Makes plenty of sense.
Always follow the money.
Always follow the money. Word. Always follow the money. He's absolutely right. I had no idea about that. And so these are some of the issues. These are some of the issues. This homosexual issue is huge. James Martin here, the Jesuit priest, he was a member of the Curia. We played a clip from him during the papacy of Francis. Francis actually appointed him as a important position. It says Francis appointed Martin as a consultant of the Secretariat of Communications for the Vatican. So he was the comms secretariat for the Vatican under Pope Francis. Pope Francis, Jesuit. Martin, Jesuit. All Jesuits ran Vatican II. I've already explained that to you. So, and you can see here it says on Martin's Wikipedia page, Martin's public outreach to the LGBTQ community. So this guy was the secretariat and ambassador for Pope Francis, reaching out to the LGBTQ plus blah, 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 blah community. This is insane. This is the issue that's dividing the church right now that I'm explaining to you. Many issues, but this is a huge issue. Community has drawn both support and criticism from within the Catholic Church. This guy right here, the Jesuit James Joseph Martin, is hated by the traditionalists. He's hated by, well, I don't know if I'm going to use the word hated, but they see him being from the Curia under Pope Francis, one of these people who's on the inside track that is trying to change these things in the church and make the church more modern. And this is Father James Martin, and he goes into explaining the exact same synod that you heard Dr. Marshall talking about a moment ago. Take a listen.
I want to tell you about some news from the Vatican that might have flown under your radar, and there's a little bit of an introduction that we have to know. So, as you probably remember, in 2021, Pope Francis convened the Synod of Bishops, okay? And it was a broadly consultative gathering, and it was meant to make the church more welcoming, more participatory, and more listening, if you can use that.
This guy may be gay himself. The Curia is full of homosexuality, as I'm going to show you here in a moment. So this guy, just watching him, he may be a homosexual himself because there's a lot of
word. And it started with listening sessions on the parish levels in all over the world. And the results of those parish level discussions were sent up to the diocesan level, right, kind of the city level. And those were gathered together, and they were sent to bishops' conferences who produced reports. And then those bishops' conferences gathered together in continental sessions, so by the various continents, broadly speaking. They did their work, they issued reports, and then it was all sent to the Vatican in a working document. Okay. Fully half of the bishops' conference reports mentioned LGBTQ people. Okay. So
you forgot
when
the
we
plus.
gathered, I was a delegate at the Synod in 2023 in October. That was one of the things that was on the table. LGBTQ ministry, or ministry to LGBTQ Catholics. So it was kind of explosive. I've written about this on outreach.faith, and it was hard for some people to discuss these things because of the cultural context that they came from.
So I'm telling you, it's a cultural issue. This isn't a doctrinal issue. This isn't an issue that is laid out, in Scripture plainly. It's a cultural issue, is what the Jesuit James Martin said.
And certainly also their theological perspectives on this. Before the next session in October 2024, Pope Francis decided that he would take off the table certain particular topics like women's ordination to the diaconate, LGBTQ ministry, polygamy, those kinds of things, and give them to study groups. So the idea was that each study group would look at these particular issues. Okay, so the Synod ends. We put out our final document in October 2024, and the study groups have been continuing. And the idea is that the study groups will report to the Holy Father and also to the Church at large. And different ones have produced their reports. So just this week, study group 9 which was tasked with looking at what was originally called controversial issues, but they changed to emerging issues, including LGBTQ ministry, was finally published. And it's a pretty big deal. Why is it a big deal? Well, first of all, they have included the testimony of two married gay Catholics. All right. So they not only listen.
How are you a Catholic and you are in a homosexual marriage? How? Who performed the ceremony marrying you? You weren't married in the Catholic Church? And if you were married in the Catholic Church, who did that? How are you in a same-sex marriage and you're Catholic? How? What's going on here?
A big deal. Well, first of all, they have included the testimony of two married gay Catholics. All right. So they not only listened to the testimony of two married gay Catholic men, but they published it as part of their report. And you can find it at synod.va. And also I wrote an article about it.
Yeah, don't care. So you see what's going on here. There's a filth in the church, just like Father Reppinger said that the demons are telling him that there's a filth inside the church. And this filth was going on during the papacy of Benedict XVI. He came from the courier. His job in the courier under John Paul II was he was the chief inquisitor. That his job is every single scandal that the church was dealing with hit his desk first. He was well aware of all of the scandals. He was well aware of the homosexuality in the church. He actually commissioned a report that he gets the report just weeks before he decided to resign. And it was an internal report about all of these scandals that were going on during the papacy of Benedict XVI, who preceded the Jesuit Francis. And there were all this dirt going on. Homosexuality was a huge issue and is a huge issue within the church. I want to play this clip. I have about 10 more minutes. I want to play this clip from the Vatican Secrets documentary from Frontline that we've been looking at. And this is about the homosexuality in the church in the Curia. Take a listen.
I came here when I was a seminarian in 1986. And I remember I had this very wide-eyed idea of the Vatican, of these holy cardinals and holy men. And I was shocked within a matter of weeks, months, at the careerism, at the sexual innuendo, the whole kind of non-holy life.
Can you imagine being a young child and looking at the Catholic Church and believing, that this was a, wholesome, organization, institution that you've put up on this pedestal, close to God for your whole life. You're young. You come into seminary, ready to serve God, and you start to see this corruption and start being hit on by other gay priests that are trying to have sex with you and all this stuff. And it just shatters your perspective. This is what this guy's talking about here, that happened to him when he got to Rome. And I'm sure it happened to many, many people.
I came here when I was a seminarian in 1986. And I remember I had this very wide-eyed idea of the Vatican, of these holy cardinals and holy men. And I was shocked within a matter of weeks, months, at the careerism, at the sexual innuendo, the whole kind of non-holy life that I had expected.
A large part of the hierarchy is homosexual.
A large part of the hierarchy is homosexual. This guy won't even show his face. A large part of the hierarchy is homosexual.
That I had expected.
A large part of the hierarchy is homosexual. Certainly at the top levels of the church.
And certainly at the top levels. So certainly at the top levels of the Curia. And that would make sense. That's why they wanted to change the church teachings and all this and more modernize the church, because I mean, they're homosexuals themselves. That would make sense. This is what Father Rappinger said, that many of these people came into the priesthood already playing for the other team, already in the occult, already practicing homosexuality and other defile things that are forbidden by the church and have been for 2,000 years. And now they're trying to change the church to meet their depravity.
Sexual.
È omosessuale, è cosa risaputa, anzi proprio nei vertici della Chiesa, nelle curie.
Certainly at the top levels of the church, in the Curia, many important people, such as bishops and archbishops, are gay.
Sono gay.
He's a Vatican guide who says he's had relationships with several priests.
Qui a Roma è molto frequente, è molto facile incontrare.
Here in Rome, it's very easy to meet a gay priest on a bus, in a church, and important churches like St. Peter's.
È ancora più semplice.
It's even easier when you go to gay clubs and gay bars.
Nei gay bars, gli incontri.
You see them in the bars, and then at the altar the following Sunday.
La domenica successiva.
The world he is describing was captured by reporter Carmelo Abate, who began a 2-year investigation when a gay friend told him he'd just had sex with a priest.
The priest went on to say, actually on Saturday, there will be a party here in Rome, in a club in Testaccio with me and lots of other priests. We've also booked 2 escorts from Turin, from Piemonte, who will be the entertainers at the party. If you like, you're invited.
So this is a journalist. His friend told him that he's gay. His gay friend of his told him that he had sex with a couple of priests. And then he ends up getting invited to this private party. And listen to what happens at this private party. He takes a hidden camera. You're going to see images.
I'd love you to join us.
This is from his hidden camera.
Abate went with his friend to the party and took a hidden camera.
My objective was to write a story for my newspaper, not to make videos. But I knew very well what I was going into. I knew very well how the church authorities could react. So I wanted to make sure I had evidence to support my story.
The priest hosting the party greeted them, flanked by the 2 escorts.
I would have said that half of the people there might have been priests.
Half of the people at the party are priests.
And it wasn't just a guess. They introduced themselves as priests.
They introduced themselves as priests.
Some worked at the Vatican, others in the institutions that cluster around the Vatican in Rome.
The party in Rome ended at my friend's house. At the end of the party, we all went back to his place. Then my friend and the French priest locked themselves in a bedroom, and I went to sleep in another room.
Listen to this. Listen to this. This is the next day after this party, this homosexual gay party, and then they go back to his friend's house. They have gay sex all night, these priests. And I want you to look at this. You can see here, the next morning they come out after having sex all night, this gay party, all this debauchery, and they start doing mass there in the apartment. They take out the vestments there and start doing, this is a ritual. This is the ritual that Father Rappinger was talking about. The demons are telling him these guys are doing. What is this about? All the, this debauchery, and then taking out the vestments and start having mass there? What is going on here? This is wicked. This is evil. This is going on in the church.
The party in Rome ended at my friend's house. At the end of the party, we all went back to his place. Then my friend and the French priest locked themselves in a bedroom, and I went to sleep in another room.
The next day, Abate continued to film.
Then came the moment that I found most shocking of all. And that was the moment that opened my eyes to what was really going on.
This is the moment that opened his eyes what was really going on. This is more than just, gay men in the church and having sex. When they start doing mass there after having sex, gay sex all night, he understood that this was a ritual, that this was something more. This is a part of defiling the mass, is what it is. This is a dark mass. This is something satanic.
Più scioccante di tutta la inchiesta, perché poi è il momento in cui mi si apre.
And that was the moment that opened my eyes to what was really going on. It wasn't just a matter of sex. It was something more. So there we were, in that atmosphere, in that house where they had had sex all night long, and with that man wearing vestments, and he took out all his paraphernalia and started to celebrate Mass.
For his book, Abate says he met and interviewed many other priests in Rome who lived double lives.
There is a widespread culture here in Rome of tacit consent, in the way that we know, but we don't talk about it.
So that's what was going on under Benedict XVI, and why he ends up resigning. People say he had health issues and all this. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. He gets this report just weeks that he commissioned this report, and he gets this report in just weeks after getting this report, this guy resigns. This was another issue that happened during the papacy of Benedict XVI, the Vatican leak scandals. There was a butler of Benedict XVI, Pablo Gabriele. He was a butler, and he basically was working with this journalist here, and he basically, got all these secret documents and things. The journalist ends up writing this book. The book is called His Holiness, The Secret Papers of Benedict XVI, and he shows how there was all of this infighting that was going on that between Benedict XVI and the Curia, that Benedict XVI realized, just like Adrian VI, realized that the church was at an inflection point, that the church needed much needed reforms, and the church was filthy. And it showed in these papers that the butler ends up stealing and giving to the journalist what was going on in the papacy of Benedict XVI and his fight with the homosexuals in the Curia to reform. And now he ends up resigning. Then Francis comes in, and then Francis starts making all these reforms that are seemingly tacitly more accepting of homosexuality. And we are where we are today. Like I said, I'm going to pick this back up in the next podcast. It'll probably be the last podcast that we do on this subject. I really want to get back into Matthew 16 and break down what's going on in that passage. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday.